Okay, we're now live.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you, Cindy, for sending out the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or any edits to the agenda before we approve it? No? Okay. Can I have an approval of the agenda for March 22nd, 2021?
I move to approve.
I'll second. That's John.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Thanks very much. Okay, so as we all know, we have lost Alana from our last meeting. She has moved on to a great new role, unfortunately with another township, but we wish her all the best. So we have Yvette joining us, Yvette Hurley. I'm sure all of you on the call know her, the CAO of the township, and Cindy Page. So I will leave it to the two of you to just sort of introduce yourself and maybe the introduction of Melissa, who I don't think any of us have met. Certainly I haven't.
Cindy, you want to go first? I think they all know you too, but.
So I'm Cindy Page and I'm the interim clerk here for right now, and I will be stepping in for Lynn, and I'll be clerking your Millbrook Valley Trails meeting. And if you need anything, send me an email.
There you go. My name's Yvette Hurley. I'm the CAO for the Township of Cabin-Monaghan. Just recently been appointed as Deputy Clerk and Deputy Treasurer, and also Director of Parks and Facilities. So I do have a bit of a plate full of duties right at this moment. I'm sure that'll change down the road, but I am very pleased to introduce you to Melissa Ailes. She's part of our recreation team. And some of you may know Melissa. Melissa is located usually at the CMCC. So you might have, if you went through the doors there, you would see Melissa's shining face right there. And Melissa is going to now, as recreation duties, part of her duties are what Jerry did as well, as long as mine, but Melissa has stepped up and she is going to be joining your committee and be the staff representative for Millbrook Valley Trails moving on. So Melissa, welcome.
Excellent. Melissa, I was wondering, in the past, I've offered tours of the trails to anybody from the township office who's interested and who doesn't know the trails well yet themselves. We'd have to delay it a bit because the trails are really mucky right at the moment. We'd have to wait a couple weeks for things to dry up. But we could, I could take you out along any trail that you're unfamiliar with.
You're just on mute, Melissa. If you remove it from, there we go.
Sorry, guys. I've only been a resident for a year, just over a year in Millbrook. I came from Mississauga, so, but our life as a family has always been on the outdoors. So my son has ventured around a lot of the trails, but I'd love to go with someone who has, been a part of Millbrook for many years. So that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you. Very nice to meet you. And thank you for joining the committee. We're really pleased to have you. And as I said, we're all a bunch of friendly people, except for maybe Mr. Bushel, but no, we would be more than happy to take you out on the trails at any time. So I certainly second Maureen's offer there as well. So, okay, wonderful. So the next meeting, the next item on the agenda rather is the minutes from our last meeting in February. And so thank you very much again, Cindy, for sending those out. Does anybody have any concerns, omissions, additions to those minutes?
John Follis, Rob.
Yeah.
I believe I saw that you and I had done the trails report for where was it?
Yeah, for the last.
And actually, we did Craig and I did the report in January, so I maybe it was John Frizzle that was your partner there for February.
Yeah, I think if memory serves, we went back and maybe you were on for 2 months in a row.
Oh.
But regardless, it's fine, John, because you weren't at that meeting. You weren't at the February meeting anyway, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I did my sort of basic trail report, but everybody sort of, it was the middle of winter, everything was sort of covered, so there wasn't too much to report anyway. So I think that's fine.
Through you, Chairman Jackson, just to confirm, for January, we had Craig and John Frizzle, and for February, we had Robert and John Follis. And then the next one, we have Alex and David for this meeting, and then Hillary and Maureen. I can circulate that if that will help just refresh everyone's memory what the trails reports are.
Oh, I definitely, I think there must have been a mistake with the John Frizzle. Craig and I did split the January one.
Okay, it's fine. I think, like I said, I think we all know the state of the
trails,
especially at that time of year. So I wouldn't be concerned about it. But yeah, Cindy, if you could send that out just to refresh everybody's memory for the remainder of the year, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions or concerns about the minutes from Monday, February 22nd, 2021? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes now?
As long as my name's not there for doing a report, I'll move it.
Okay, that's fine. Second?
I can second that.
Yeah, John and David. Okay, so seconded by Dave D'Agostino. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
All right, carried. Thank you. Okay, just see here, the next financial report event.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report, I'm not sure how you usually receive them, but I can let you know as of right now, the Todd's invoice has gone through at 5626.40. And I do have one outstanding, I believe an outstanding invoice. I have not processed it, or at least I don't see that it's been processed for $329.96 from Settlers. So I'm not sure what it's for. I think it's for a hoe.
Sorry, can we, I think we can get Dave to speak to that. But can we go to the Todd's? How much was Todd for?
Todd's was $1,526.40. So $1,526.40.
And that was for, is that for 2 years?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. It doesn't say that here. I can certainly check into the term of that and report back.
Okay, thank you. If memory serves, I believe we paid them in 2-year increment.
I
So
can
it used to
certainly
be-
follow up.
It used to be 6 something a year, but I wouldn't be surprised that it's gone up. And I assume we, even though it's a provincial thing, we still have to add HST, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I can certainly report back on the term of that. I just need to take a look at the background information that Ms. Arthur's maybe had.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one is the outstanding for the $329.96.
And that's for, Dave, can you speak to that?
Well, I can, but just on the previous one, I do seem to recall a previous meeting where we were made aware of the price increase for the Todd signage, and I thought we agreed to not continue with it based on the price increase because it was a substantial increase.
Oh, okay.
Does anyone else recall that?
I must have missed that meeting, but I thought we paid 2 years upfront, and then from then on we only paid in single-year increments. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised at that sudden jump too. But I don't remember that coming up about the increase. But I may have missed that meeting.
Ms. Hurley, has the invoice been paid or have we just been invoiced?
No, it looks like it's been paid.
Oh,
So maybe what I could do for your next meeting is I'll pull the background information on this through you, Mr. Chairman, and then I can report back exactly. In the meantime, we could take a look at your minutes as to what Dave is mentioning, but it looks like it's gone through.
okay. Does anybody else recall what Dave just stated there?
I remember the discussion, but I don't remember the result.
I'm just pulling it up on the website now in the background here. I'll try to see if I can figure it out if they have it posted online.
Okay.
Okay, it's possible that I'm remembering my own feelings about it and not what the group consensus was, but
No, yeah, it must have happened quite a while ago. Did it? Because
it's such a blur now. I remember the reasoning that they gave was that a lot of the signposts needed to be upgraded from wood to metal, maybe that collapsible metal type in case of an accident. And so I remember hearing that, but it just seemed like such a big jump that it didn't quite seem worth it.
And yeah, and then didn't we talk about, well, sort of the discussion around, you know, will they actually even take them down?
Right. I remember the discussion as being at the township office over the conference table. So
Yeah,
I don't remember it having been by Zoom or WebEx. So it's quite a while ago.
Oh, I think it was pre-COVID. I think you're right, Marie. Okay, if that might help you, Alex, in terms of dates, if you're looking. But okay, thank you, Ms. Hurley.
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know that just went through in 2021. So when you say pre-COVID, I'm a bit like, this actually just went through in February 23rd, 2021.
Right, but I think if memory serves, Mr. Hurley, I think we paid in 2-year increments or something. So, but
not starting this year. You paid last year as well.
Right.
Okay.
So,
okay, I'm following you. Okay.
Yeah, so
And if I recall correctly, it may have been even while Jerry Barker was still with us. I think he was giving us a heads up about it, the fact that it was going to go up. It was around the time that he was leave taking.
Right.
I did manage to just pull up the on the Ontario TODS website the annual fees for participation, and there's probably about 14 different classes. What was the yearly, or what was the invoice total? I'm just trying to figure out what it would be before tax.
It looks like it was $1,526.
The only one that would be $1,200 plus production fees for a freeway area profile, but I thought we were an off ramp.
Well, because we had already paid. There was a big upfront fee, and then there was, I think, as Dave said, a yearly or 2-year fees once it was up. Like you paid for the actual sign, and then you just paid to sort of host the sign. But okay, well, if you,
I'll report back.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
And it won't take very long to pull the file. So we'll have electronic file for so I can pull it and then report on it to your next meeting.
Okay, wonderful. And then David, the Sentiers Boreals, I assume this is the French company that we talked about pre-2020, pre the end of fiscal 20.
Yes.
Okay. So have you received the materials?
No, I don't think it got ordered. So there was a discussion at the end of the year using some remaining funds from last year's budget to purchase a few new trail tools. But unfortunately, the trail tools, it's the same company we've ordered trail tools like hose from in the past.
Right.
But the trail tools were back ordered until March this year.
Right.
And so then it was left that because we wouldn't receive the tools in 2020, that we couldn't use 2020 funds to buy them. And so then everything just got deferred until this year. And actually, I'm sorry, I actually forgot about it until I saw this agenda. So it would be good to go ahead and pay those and get a few more tools. It's maybe worth me contacting them first just to see, if they're available still. And I do believe there was possibly a price increase as well.
Okay, through you, Ms. Hurley, is it just an invoice or it's not been paid?
It's an invoice. So, David, you said you didn't receive it's unusual that you would get an invoice when you haven't received the product.
Yeah, so I'm not aware if they've been received. I don't think it would have been shipped to me personally. So it's, I don't know. So I think we would have used Alana's mailing address or the township office for that particular invoice. So
is there any other detail on there, Ms. Hurley?
No, there isn't.
Does it
If
say
I
what-
could interrupt, Chairman
just a
Jackson.
minute, it says to be shipped for March 2021 upon delivery from manufacturer.
But Miss
So-
Arthurs has left a note here that says it was not ordered and needs approval for the tools to be purchased.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Right, yeah, no, that's exactly as Dave has described, that we're trying to use up funds for 2020 fiscal, but because the materials weren't available, it couldn't be ordered. So that 300 and how much was it, Ms. Hurley?
$329.96.
Does it say what that includes? How many tools we're getting?
Yes, it includes a Hoe 7H for $76, a Hoe 60A for $76, and a Hoe 70HRH for $108. So a total of $260 plus 13%, $37.96, and you're shipping at $32. Brings you to a total of $329.96.
And Dave, does that jive with what you requested?
yeah, that sounds about right. Yep. I did see the invoice back in December. If you like, we could maybe just scrap this particular invoice because I do think that there's a price increase and we can just start the process again with them. I'll get a new invoice with the updated price. Or if we want to set an upset limit now, kind of based on that number plus, 15% or something, whatever people are comfortable with.
Well, Ms. Hurley, is there a date on that invoice?
December 29th, 2020.
Right, okay, so yeah, all right, so then let's as a committee decide if we want to we want to take those tools and then if we want to set an upset limit, and then either Dave or I can figure out what the new what the upset limit, or we could deal with the company and order those. So what would the committee do?
But it sounds to me like either we're getting last year's price or else the price is already, the increase is already built into it. So I'm not sure it'll be any worse it could even be worse if we get a new price like that. We've got the price, we got the description of the tools. So I'm not sure whether if we want the tools, it seems logical just to go with that price because it's either already got the built-in increase or they are offering to sell them at that price.
I think
Dave, go ahead, sorry.
that the price was conditional on us pre-ordering. So I don't know if it would still be considered a pre-order at this point.
Oh, so this invoice is an old one. It's not a new one they just sent.
Yeah, that's right. It's from December.
Oh, I see. Okay.
December 29th, yeah. So, okay, so how does the committee feel about the purchase of those new tools?
I'd still personally like for us to get the tools. I think if we can get our agreement finalized with the M&R, we've got a couple of new trails that we hope to build ideally this year, and so they'll get used.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, but I don't get a vote. So what do the other members think?
Well, I feel they'll be well used, that's for sure.
Those specialty made trail tools are outstanding in terms of any time I've used them before in the past, other similar ones.
Okay, great. So it sounds like Hillary, Craig, anybody else have any thoughts on?
No, sounds good.
Okay.
Clearly we'll need them.
Craig?
Sounds good.
Okay, so when we'd like, Dave, would you like me to contact them, or you already have the contact? You want to follow up?
Sure, I'm happy to do it. I can copy you on it if you like.
Okay, so would we like to set an upset limit now and approve it, or would you like Dave to report back to us and say what the total is for those tools listed for 2021 and approve it possibly in our April meeting?
I'd be afraid that we would, with all the production delays and everything, I'd be afraid that we would get pushed back in the line if we don't buy them now.
Yeah.
And so I would feel that we could hope that we get to pay the same invoiced price, but we'd leave it to Dave to negotiate whether or not they would expect an increase in 2021, and that increase shouldn't be more than, I would say, 10 or 15%.
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, that's up to the manufacturer, obviously, and I don't expect Dave to wheel and deal, of course, but I'm sorry, Ms. Hurley, can you tell me what the invoice total was again? 376?
329.96.
329. Okay, so I would, price of lumber and building supplies notwithstanding, I would feel safe saying that $400 is probably a good upset limit. But I don't know, Dave, you've had more discussions with them, so what do you think?
They mentioned the pricing, that the prices would increase, but I don't have any sense of how much. So I like the idea of $400 as well. If we're getting far above that, then we got to start to maybe question only getting 2 instead of 3, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So do we want to have a motion then to set an upset limit of $400 for the purchase of 3 tools from Sentiers Boreal? I'm sure I'm saying that incorrectly. Anybody, Dave, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I would.
Wonderful. Who would like to second it?
I'll second it.
Mr. Fallis, wonderful. All in approval?
Aye.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just before we get off the financial report, Alex, anything to report on the Todd signs?
Yeah, so I pulled up, and this might have been discussed at the last meeting, or when it was discussed last time. So this is November 23rd, 2019. And it kind of reinforces what we were all thinking there. I remember it being roughly $600 a year. And there was on CBC an article here where golf course owner was complaining he was paying $600 a year for 2 signs on the 401, and now he's paying $750 per sign for a total of $1,500. So roughly $1,500, he says. So that's probably what we've gone through as well.
Okay. But you haven't found any reference yet in our minutes about what we decided?
I wasn't digging through the minutes. No, I was just trying to find some sort of reference material.
All right. Well, Ms. Hurley, Ms. Page, if you could, as you say, maybe dig that up and we can discuss it the next meeting to see exactly what we had decided. That would be wonderful. Okay. Are we good to move on to 8.2? Orca report by Ms. Meredith.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I actually have quite a few updates this time. So I'm really glad that you submitted your tree order early. We completely sold out of everything this year. We sold over 11,000 trees, and every nursery in Ontario is sold out right now. So that's great news. There'll be lots of new trees going in the ground, but you got your order in early, so I believe you got everything you ordered. So that's great. Today's World Water Day, so happy World Water Day, everyone. The minutes reflected that I was going to follow up and get an update for you on the status of the signage at the mill. So that's in process. We don't have a definitive date yet. We're waiting for the ground to thaw and things to get back underway with that. So it will be this spring, but I don't have a date for you, unfortunately. And you'd also asked me to find out a little bit more about the Talking Forest program at Kawartha Conservation. So I'll give you just a quick intro for those of you that aren't familiar with it, but it is a really neat interactive app that allows you to basically walk along a trail. And the way Kawartha's done it is they've set it up so it's based on trees. And so you don't have to have your phone, you don't have to look at your phone, but your phone will talk to you. So the way it works is you, if you're the one setting it up, you just mark the locations or the trees you want with their GPS coordinates. And then you can record a story or some information about that feature. So the way the Kawartha Conservation one works, they actually hired some local personalities. So they've got some radio personalities. I think they've got some actors and things. So as you're walking down the trail, as you pass the white pine, you'll hear it go, I'm the white pine behind you. And so the trees will talk to you and they'll tell you about themselves. So it's a really neat way to have an interactive trail experience. But it could be, you know, as you go over the floating bridge, it could, you know, someone could tell you about it if you were doing it for the Millbrook Valley Trail. So it's put together by a company called Tree Frog, and they gave us some pricing. So it's $5,000 set up for 20 GPS points, 10,000 for unlimited GPS points. And then there's an annual fee after that. So if you've got 20 points, it's 2,500. And if you've got unlimited, it's about 5,000. So it's not cheap. But the way it works is they set you up with an app. Right now, they only have Android. They're working on iOS, but it's a separate cost for both. So 5,000 for Android, 5,000 for iOS. Wow. Yeah, I can see Hillary's face. So yes, it's expensive. With the 20 points, you can have 4 different trails with 5 points on each. You have one trail with 15 points, you know, so you have full control in the back end, right, to set it up, and you can switch them. So you can have them all for the winter and then switch them and have a different one for the spring. So you can upload them and it has a photo and then the audio file. So from a setup perspective, it looks pretty straightforward in terms of they give you the administrator rights. You go out, mark the GPS points for where you want it to talk, and then you just pre-record just using an audio file on your phone, snap a photo. So that part of it's pretty easy, and then you can change it as often as you want. But that gives you some of the ideas of what the costs are. And I can certainly share the sales rep that I spoke with. I can share his contact information with you. I can flip that out after the meeting. But yeah, so really interesting. Not an inexpensive investment, but certainly something for consideration.
No, that's excellent. Thank you. And who's paying for it on their end? Is it strictly the Conservation Authority? Or do you know
that I didn't ask. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm just wondering, you know, something I could look into, but you know, the possibility of partnerships, this is something we'd like to pursue. It's it sounds really interesting to me. But,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is this something that the Cowan Foundation would feel was a worthy expenditure?
Yeah, possibly. I'm thinking more in terms of sort of the ongoing costs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you could pass that information along to me, Meredith, I'd appreciate it. And I can maybe do some research. It doesn't, before I've got a couple of things I want to follow up with you about, Meredith, but before we go to those, does anybody have any thoughts or comments on that particular issue?
I think it's wonderful. And I think we could easily, there are 20 easy points to find between Med, Mountain, Trailhead, and the 4th line, especially if we develop Mansion Trail. I think there'd be plenty of spots to hit just on those trails alone, especially if you include the beaver stuff as long as it exists out there.
I just had one thought is sometimes these organizations offer different pricing for, not-for-profits or community organizations like this. I wasn't sure if there was multi-tier pricing.
I believe that is, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that is the nonprofit community
Oh.
group pricing for conservation authorities.
Ouch.
But I'll certainly provide the sales reps information so you can follow up.
And did they mention that interest timeline for iOS?
Soon.
Okay.
When you asked or said about you record it on your phone, or does it have to be coming from an outside source while you're on the trail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe if you can do it both ways. You could record. You probably want to record when you come back and it's quiet, but I think you can do it anywhere. You just have to upload the audio file, so you could do that from wherever you like.
I guess my point is if you're in a location, it's the GPS coordinates. I don't understand the phones, but if I walk past a lot of the trees when I'm out on the trail, I can't get reception from my phone. So I'm just wondering whether you'd have signal for it, or if it's something that it's all stored in your phone, but then how does your phone know what the GPS point is if you haven't got reception? So.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I did ask that question because similar at Warsaw Caves, we don't have continuous coverage either. Everything is downloaded to your phone, so you can still run the app even without coverage.
Thank you.
And you'd have to be manual in that case? You'd have to press play?
No, it does it automatically.
Even
It downloads it to your phone in advance.
no, but how does, if you're passing the white pine tree, how does it know that if you don't have coverage?
It's already downloaded the GPS points to your phone, so it's got all the background data that it needs. So it operates, the app works seamlessly, even if you don't have continuous cell coverage.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And I wonder, there's no video to it, so how much battery power would it use up on your phone? Probably not a lot, right? If it's just audio?
That would probably depend on your phone.
Right.
That would be a better question for the tech people. I didn't ask that, but you do have the ability to include a photo and the audio file for each GPS point.
Okay. Huh.
Okay, yeah, that's one. If you could send me that information,
I will.
that would be excellent. I will follow up. Thank you.
And I'd like to go and experience it. Whereabouts is the Kawartha Conservation?
It's at the Ken Reed Conservation Area, so
Okay.
I can send that out to the group as well.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. I just
sorry.
have one more update. It is spring, and we certainly are experiencing higher than normal conditions, which means high water levels and melting snow. So we do have a flood watch in effect right now. You may see that upgraded to a flood warning later this week, depending on if we get the rain that's forecasted. So just a reminder to keep yourself and your loved ones away from the water right now, because conditions are certainly dangerous, and then just keep your eyes open, and you'll see some additional flood messaging later on in the week.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
It's through you, Mr. Chair. So I've been told that the levels in Lake Ontario are lower than normal, and I've heard reports that some of the lakes are low around here. So is this based on fear of snow melting north of here, or is the Otonabee high here right now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know about the Lake Ontario levels because we sort of pay more attention to what's happening to the north of us. The Trans Severn Waterway generally drains the reservoir lakes in the fall, so there's room for the water in the spring when it melts. It sort of depends on how quickly things melt, because right now you've got snowpack still on the ground up in the northern part of the watershed. You still have frozen ground conditions there. You're starting to see ground thawing here, so there's a little bit of capacity for infiltration. So it sort of depends, but you also have control structures throughout the Trent Severn system. So it depends on how quickly they're moving water through. So say the Otonabee River, it's completely controlled. So it just depends on how much water is being moved downstream. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess the doesn't answer the question of whether right now the autonomy is high or whether it's just at an average level or whether it's actually been drained like the lakes.
Yeah, we're not seeing any flooding on the Otonabee right now. And as I mentioned, the Otonabee is controlled by a series of dams throughout its length. So it's unlikely to see flooding. It's such a big watercourse that we don't often see that. You sometimes see higher levels. Flows are not very high on the Otonabee right now. So again, Trent Severn's not moving a ton of water at the moment. That can certainly change depending on conditions. But what I can do is I can send out our current flood message to everyone, and it provides all of the detail from our flood duty officer. And they certainly will provide a much more comprehensive picture than I can.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Just on the subject of the tree planting, do you know roughly when we will be receiving them?
We're hoping April 29th and 30th for pickup, but I have to wait to confirm that with the nursery,
Sure.
just depending on the weather conditions over the next couple of weeks.
Sure. Okay, great. And then at our last meeting, we talked about the possibility of the trout. Sorry, Craig, help me out here. The trout group helping out planting, but Craig's provided an update on that to me. Can you provide that update to the rest of the committee?
Sure. I guess formally their name is Trout Unlimited Millbrook Chapter.
Thank you.
I think I'm not sure if you saw my last email there, Mr. Chair, but their plans changed considerably due to the kind of going back to the point that Meredith had made from Orca, that the tree supplies are in high demand or limited this year. So their approach now is they decided to spend $1,000 on trees and simply make those available to private landowners. So apologies if you missed some communication. I thought I emailed you on that.
No, you did. I just wanted you to share.
Okay, right. So that's the case now. Initially, Mr. Chair, they had we're looking at potentially working with us on private lands or public lands, but that strategy's changed, right? Simply because of the amount of trees that were available. Yeah.
Okay, great. So once we get closer to that date and Meredith has a firm date for us on the delivery of the trees, then we can either organize at the April meeting a group of us to go out and to plant those trees and where to plant those trees, or we can do that just via email with the committee members if those timelines don't meet up. Is that good with everyone? Okay, great.
Yes. Mr. Chair, if I might add, I have a suspicion that with the Trout Unlimited plantings, that if they don't have eligible landowners or enough interest in those trees, I'm sure they will, but there's the chance that they might have a surplus. So if that happens, I'll ensure that they're directed back to you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Meredith?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Meredith? No? All right, wonderful. Let's move on to trail report. So apparently it's me again this month. Is that correct, Ms. Page? Have you managed to look up that list? I didn't realize I was two months in a row, but it's
No,
fine.
through you. It says for the March 22nd, Alex and David. So we can make a change to you.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Alex and David is who it is. So we'll send that list out so everybody has it.
Okay. Well, Alex, I don't know. Have you had a chance? I know I just spoke to Dave, and Dave's able to report on everything north of Fourth Line. Have you had a chance to look? If not, I can certainly fill in because I've walked them quite extensively the last few days.
Yeah, well, I did. I tried to do the in-town. I tried to do Station Trail yesterday, actually, and was greeted by a family on their way out that insisted that it was not worth going in. It was either terrifyingly slippery with ice or you're up to your knees in mud. So I would hazard a guess that a lot of our trails are probably in a similar similar shape right now as they always are. And I guess a good question too is are we planning on shutting the trails down during the spring again, like we've done the last 2 years now?
Yeah, that's certainly something I wanted to discuss at this juncture. So I've done the loop and even the trail that's closed and the new trail that's not officially open yet. The loop, of course, is our our most popular trail still, and it is quite muddy, and it's both muddy and icy because, as we all know, the interior where the sunlight can't get into is still pretty much glare ice. So I don't know. It wasn't the most pleasant walk the last few days, shall we say? And the mud's only going to get worse, of course, when the ice eventually does melt. I mean, it is starting to melt, but it's still more ice than slush. But as Meredith mentioned, we've got potentially quite a bit of rain coming at the end of this week, and temperatures are looking at staying over 0 degrees. So I don't know, Maureen, you walk these a lot. You always have good opinions. And Dave, you can talk about what you've observed on the trails north of the fourth line. But maybe I'll throw it to Maureen first and see what you think in terms of use closures. Oh, you're on mute, Maureen.
I think we should announce closure on our Facebook page of certain trails. So I would say Med and Baxter Creek and the fairground entrance should all be officially closed, knowing full well that people are not going to fully obey that. But I think to protect the trails, even if we can just keep the volume down, that would be wonderful. I think as soon as it starts not being well below freezing at night, we're in trouble. My morning walk has been fine. It's been mud free up until this morning because it was going down below freezing every night. But as soon as the sun comes up, it starts mucking up. So I've stayed off the trails for the remainder of the day. I've been going up to Jail Hill. So I would say probably for the next week and through the rain, we should probably close those particular trails.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking now in the long-term forecast. There's only one night in the next 14 that's supposed to go below 0. Most are in, the single digits still. So, Dave, what do you think?
So I mean, I think it's a good idea. My feelings haven't changed on it. I was in support of it last year. It's difficult for people, locals who are used to using the trails. And so I do feel for them. But it does, they get, especially, Meds and Baxter Creek Trail, any of the low-lying trails, they do get so muddy that, you can be stepping in above your shoe, above your ankle. And it's just, it's not good for our trails. They end up messy. They take longer to dry out as a result. They get compacted and, the wet spots grow. So in that sense, I'm in support of it. I do wonder if there are, if we started with a blanket closure last year and then selectively reopened certain trails. Maybe because we didn't see as much snow this year, some of the higher trails and, the rail bed, for instance, those might be okay. But closing them all is kind of the safe thing to do in terms of the trails. It's just, how much outrage are we willing to tolerate, and what's the trade-off there? So.
Mm-hmm.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just have a comment. We have had a severe accident on this March 6th. I'm in support of David's comments with, if it's, better to close them all, it's easier to manage, and then reopen them when, you're out checking and doing your trail report to see if you can open them. But we did have someone that was severely injured on the 6th.
Right, but the 6th, the accident on the 6th was due to ice, correct?
That I don't know, Mr. Chairman. I actually just thought I'd mention about the injury. That's all. I'm not sure the details of that.
Okay, okay. Okay, other members, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I recall the day of the injury as being the first day of very severe ice. So, you know, it wasn't something that we could predict. I also, by the way, feel that Station Trail should be closed for the time being as well. I don't feel as strongly that the rail bed south of the fourth line needs to be closed. And I don't feel that Meadow needs to be closed to Elgar. And Dave, I don't know how you feel about the side trails. Cedar Trail is usually really wet and icy at this time of year, but you guys did all that O-ring, and I haven't really looked to see how that remedied the situation this year. I haven't been down that trail in the last week or so.
Yeah, I could say that, yeah, so the one spot where there was a spring coming through and then down the trail, I think we've fixed with that late Big O installation in the fall. However, that trail is quite sheltered, being mostly cedar forest. And so the ice takes the longest to melt there. And it can, you know, it's up and down. So it can, you know, if we're talking about ice, it can be quite slippery. But I think most people, you know, wear cleats if they're going to go in when it's icy. On the note of Meadow extension going to Elgar Drive, you know, I'd be willing to tolerate leaving that one open and just, you know, coming in with tools. It's a short enough trail, and you know, coming in with tools afterwards and just fixing, you know, any ruts or footprints that get left behind or hardened in the dirt, just to, you know, offer something to people that they can still use. In terms of those side trails, the mountain bike, Millbrook MTB, the mountain bike club, we've reached out to the MNR about maintaining those trails. So we are going to put up our own signs. We can't say that they're closed. We're going to put up some signs on Backstage Pass and Trenchtown, just encouraging people to stay off. So they'd be, you know, along the same lines of the signs we've used in the past. So those ones will be, you know, marked to discourage people from using them. And so, so there is that.
Okay. Hillary, Mr. Follis, what are your thoughts?
I would, if I can go, may go first. I'd be in favor of closing them as much as we can. If anybody felt inclined to write a letter about explaining to people that it's a letter to the Times, I mean, explaining to people why it's important to spare the trails at this time of year in order to have them in decent shape later on. So that's basically the way I feel about it.
Okay, just Hillary, before you maybe chime in, just on that note, John, I was thinking about possibly writing a letter in a different vein to the Times. I guess my thought about writing one about the trail closures is all well and good, but by the time it gets published at this point, they might, you know, be reopened. But that's certainly something we could publish digitally, both on our Facebook page and Twitter, I suppose. Hillary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, probably safe to say I would just close them all. And I like that idea with doing a kind of a blurb about why it's important. And because a lot of people, they see, oh, you can't go, and they get mad. But if there's a logical, obviously conservation reason to doing it, hopefully more people are like, they'll understand. So I would do a blanket closure just for the protection of the trails. And then, yeah, just so that they stay safe and healthy.
Okay, Craig, any thoughts?
I'd support it as well, Mr. Chair. I think you already touched on the point, or somebody did, that inevitably you're going to have people who, you know, if you're planning on putting up tape or whatnot, you're going to have people who will proceed to walk through those. And I don't know if other people have noticed, but I have noticed some ATV traffic on our sanctioned trails. So all it takes is you know, people not being on the trails and one ATV to go down one of those trails on a bad day, and it's going to be an unfortunate mess. But again, there's not much we can really do, right? But I do agree that closing them while they're wet is a good idea.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, Alex and Mr. Graham.
In terms of the closing, I'm totally in support of that. I think, yeah, I know we go out and put the caution tape up across and stuff, but anyone who's going to go is just going to go anyways. I kind of agree with what was said there. Is just a well-crafted short, even a paragraph, just explaining why you shouldn't be hiking the trails this time of year and the impact, everything that Dave said, just summarized in a brief little summary and put that up there. But I don't think it's worth trying to actually blockade the trails again this year, because they just end up with caution tape stuck in the grass and everything. Just a bit of a mess.
Yeah, but some signage wouldn't be amiss.
Yeah, and we can update both. I can update the Google Maps accordingly, Google Maps listing, which is probably where most people are kind of looking at stuff anyways. I can mark us as temporarily closed and post to the Facebook, which is obviously quite popular too, and especially if some of the local groups share that. I think and again, to Dave's point, if we can eliminate even half the people that are going out on the trails during this time of year, it'll dramatically impact the recovery time.
Okay. What do you think, Matthew, from a township perspective?
Full closure, no doubt.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. D'Agostino, do you have any of the trail closure signs left?
I don't think so. Yeah, they were laminated and they took some abuse.
Okay. So let's get some more of those printed, because this is going to be a recurring process every year. So, do you think we should get the ones we made last, the same ones, or if we're going to be a more permanent solution, should we look into something like the Illuma panels?
So as the mountain bike club, we did basically the same thing, but on the aluminum panels, knowing that we're going to be putting them on and off every year and that people are going to swat them with a stick and punch them and do everything else. So
Okay.
I think that's the way to go. Otherwise, I mean, you can do the laminated paper like we did, but then you have to buy new ones every year, and some of them end up in the woods.
Do you have prices for us then if the mountain bike club just purchased some?
Yeah, well, I do. I don't know if I have great pricing though. So we went with Signorama and they were great, but it was about $50 per sign. And I've since followed up for another smaller sign quote with them, which was still $40 or $50, but the same sign through Maximum Signs was about $12.95. So yeah, so as much as 50, but hopefully, $20 or something through Maximum Signs.
Maximum's the one in Pontypool, yeah?
That's right, yeah.
Right. Okay, Mrs. Hurley?
You, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, Mr. Chairman, we do use Maximum here at the municipality as well. So if we can assist you on that, we're happy to do that.
Okay, do we want to have a motion then for an upset limit? And I'll look into getting some of those made.
Yes, Rob, what will it actually say? Will it say spring, trail closed spring thaw? Is that sort of what you're thinking of putting on them? Because if we just put trail closed or trail temporarily closed, you're not educating as you do it.
True, but I guess the more general we are, the more we could use them for other things, right? Like we have Meadow Trail closed now because of the beavers, and we'll have to do that from time to time too, or just even for general maintenance. We want to put things up, but I'm open to suggestions on what verbiage should be. I mean, we could say trail closed and then have something like check website for details, and because all of that could be easily updated online, as Alex mentioned.
Can anybody come up with something snappy like save our trails, walk on them later, not now? Or
I think just a blurb saying temporary seasonal closures, just something like that. With just as I said, we don't need to go into scientific research studies. Just a brief explanation, like exactly the elevator speech that Dave had mentioned earlier. All those reasons why.
I like temporary seasonal closure because it works in every season. So that's perfect.
Sure, okay. So let's assume maybe, let's say maybe $20-25 a sign. Should we set an upset limit of somewhere around $200-250? What do people think?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Can I get a motion for something like that then, please?
Yeah, I can make that motion.
Okay. What would you
Oh,
like?
250. Yeah, let's say 250, I think.
250, okay.
I'll
Somebody like to
second that.
Mr. Fallis, okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I will call hopefully as early as tomorrow and see what we can do. And then Miss Hurley, if I need the township's assistance on that, I can contact either yourself or Miss Page.
Actually, you could probably contact Melissa,
Melissa.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
but we're happy to follow up for you if you have a design or anything. We can certainly
no.
send it in.
Okay, and just for you, Miss Hurley, again, we've had these made before. I'm assuming we don't need, they've just said simply trail closed. I'm assuming we don't need to put logos or anything on them.
If, through you, Mr. Chairman, if you don't normally put logos on, then I would say no.
Yeah, okay. And then
That's
they're-
entirely the committee decision, of course.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. They're just temporary signs, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
certainly
fine.
all of our permanent signs have all the appropriate logos, but I don't think it needed for this. Okay, wonderful. I will do that. Dave, was there anything specific on the trails that you had sort of reviewed this month that you wanted to bring up?
Okay, yeah. So did you want me to focus on, like, I have some comments on the M&R property. Do you want me to go into those, or?
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering actually if we can maybe kill two birds with one stone. We're going to talk about a spring workday down here at 9.3. So if you've got some issues that maybe could be tackled in terms of maintenance, we could discuss there.
Okay, yeah. So, well, maybe I'll just first, so let me just note a couple trees. So the, on the meadow extension coming up from Elgar, there's a tree that's fallen about halfway. It's not on the trail, but it's got, you know, some of the ends of some of the branches are right up to the trail edge. So that's, you know, an easy one with loppers or a handsaw. And there's also a sort of small to medium-sized tree leaning across the trail near the top. It's not an obstacle. It's just, it just needs to go at some point. But that could wait for, you know, drier trail conditions and no ice. And so maybe I can look at those, or maybe I'll remind John Fallis to get out his chainsaw as we see
When
how
it
this
dries
goes.
up a little? When it dries up a little?
Yeah, when it dries up, totally. The only other thing I was going to comment on that property is the that little bridge on Cedar Trail, and this is one for workday. I was thinking it's missing its bottom step, and I think we replaced it last year, but the stringers are kind of rotten. So that if everyone knows that small bridge with the handrails that goes over the little creek on Cedar Trail, it could use some attention. And I'd really love to see that long stretch of duckboard that leads into it from the rail bed. I'd like to see some of the decking replaced with like horizontal boards, like more traditional boardwalk. And I don't know if we have enough wood for that, but I was thinking, you know, with some of the reserve funds that even the money I donated myself, that I'd be happy if that went toward a wood order and could be put towards that. And I'd be willing to recruit volunteers to get that job done. So those two things on Cedar Trail, and that was kind of the worst of it for the M&R property from what I can see through the snow and ice.
Okay, yeah, good. A couple of things I want to touch on there. We have a bit of wood left at the shop, the works yard. And one of the things I failed to ask you, Ms. Carter, was do you have any indication or know if the Hope Mill is planning to cut this year?
I don't know, but I can certainly find out for you.
Okay, I mean, they did last year, and presumably things were worse this time last year than they are this year. So yeah, if you could find that out, that would be wonderful. I don't even, you know, knowing they don't start usually cutting until May or June anyway. We've got a bit of a wait, but those of you who have followed what's going on in the building industry know that wood in general is in short supply, and the supply that there is extraordinarily expensive. I've been looking at doing some stuff around my house, and you used to be able to get a 2x4 stud for about $2.85, and now they're almost $11. So I'm hoping that that won't impact us that much, because those are of course coming from large suppliers and lumber yards and massive sort of contractors, and we're getting our woods are generally from the Hope Mill, who of course aren't looking to make a profit on it, but the supply of wood may be an issue this year. And I also, we've also purchased wood from local sawmills here in the past, and obviously we don't really need as much pressure treated. It's more sort of the natural cedar. So I'm hoping that wood will be available and still be of a reasonable price, but I think we'll have to revisit that as and when we're able to, as things sort of start coming back online. But the supply we have at the works yard currently would probably get us through one work day at the most. There's not a lot there. As we know, we didn't get anything last year because of the pandemic. And we did have that fairly major work day last fall where we built quite a bit of boardwalk. So wood supply may be an issue for us. Wood cost hopefully won't be an issue, but it may be that we won't be able to get any real wood supply in until later in the fall. So we might need to keep that in mind for a possible spring work day. But in terms of general repairs, as Maureen mentioned, just before the snow hit, there's the first curved boardwalk there on Lower Meds. One of the beams is broken, so once the ground sort of starts to cooperate a bit more, we can get out there and brace that again. And there are a number of boards on the floating bridge and the floating boardwalk that need to be replaced. Again, we should have the supply to be able to do that, but not much more than that. In terms of general status on Meds Park, this was a discussion in our last meeting with Miss Arthurs before she left. But if we all remember, the Millbrook Valley Trails contributed, I think, $750 to the township in order for them to build a French drain on Meds Park to divert some of the water from the spring at the top of the hill and divert it down into the pond. That work was completed by the township, but only a few days before the snow and the frost came. So now that the snow has melted, it's kind of obvious that there needs to be a bit more repair done. It needs to be flattened because I think the earth has heaved with the fresh dirt, and so it's quite a noticeable hump now in the park, and it will obviously need to be seeded. So I don't know, Melissa or if Yvette, if we need to talk to, I'm sorry, I forget his name. Wayne about that. If there was, I'm sure they're aware of it, but I can certainly make them aware if not, and we can discuss sort of what they're thinking. I mean, obviously does not need to be done tomorrow, but as long as it's on their radar, I suppose.
I can, through you, Mr. Chairman, I will send Wayne an email and ask him to take a look. I'm not sure if they have been out, but I can certainly have him take a look and see about the works that need to be done there.
Sure. Okay, wonderful.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay. Then leaving the rest of that maybe for a quick discussion around what we could do for a spring work day. Is there any other questions around the trail report before we move on to the trail master plan update? No? Okay, good. So 9.1 trail master plan update. You all remember in our last meeting with Ms. Arthurs and with Mr. Graham, we went through this and we were asked to sort of think about it during this past month in terms of what we wanted the focus to be. I believe, Matthew, that the purpose tonight is to really get this firmed up and completed, yes?
Through you, Chair, if possible. I mean, there's no real urgency, but which we need to get this in front of council. I mean, you know, it's a project that I think we're close to, but it really depends on the feedback and the feelings of the committee itself. I mean, you know, there's been some work done, and I think, you know, with regards to the list of you know, potential projects to focus on, you know, that's really sort of maybe something that has to be a sort of an ongoing consideration. You know, we're already more than an hour through this meeting, so I don't know, you know, we still have a number of items on the agenda. But, you know, so I'm not sure if we can facilitate the final discussion of those, of that, if you want to do that. I just worry about the timeline with which we have left for the remainder of the meeting comments. You know, if people have thought about the adjustments to what they foresee as the, you know, sort of the projects list for the Millbrook Valley Trails, great. I didn't see much in the way of between meeting conversations about it, but you know, we can either dwell on it now, or we can move on to the other things and sort of maybe have more time to carve out to finalize these discussions, specifically with this, you know, proposed projects moving forward. So that's sort of my take on it, but happy to discuss.
Yeah, so what does the committee think?
I can go first through you, Mr. Chair. It's Craig. I agree with Matt. Like it's going to be really challenging to go through this in this type of meeting with the time already being just after 6 o'clock. I've gone through it in detail. I'm happy to submit some comments, perhaps back to you, Mr. Chair, and to our council representative. A couple of real minor things that I'm not sure if they're typos or things that were overlooked in the editing process that just didn't make sense to me when I was reviewing it. Again, I don't think we have time to go right into the details here, so I'm not sure if that's something we could do through email or whatnot, but I do agree with our deputy mayor.
Yeah. Through Rob, if I could, through you, just a suggestion, maybe what we could do is, for the sake of time in this meeting, is we could ask members to submit, you know, every member of the committee to submit a comment, whether they're happy with the revisions as there are, just to close the loop. And then we can schedule another meeting of the subcommittee to take in that feedback, have a discussion, and then maybe come back with something a bit more finalized for the board to sort of revisit and maybe make minor tweaks to, and then go from there. So does that if everyone's okay with that, we can do that. And when we're able to convene as a subcommittee, and maybe it probably will take one meeting of the subcommittee, but then you'll get something, you know, if we can have, you know, maybe a 2-week or a 1-week period where people can, you know, we'd like a comment from every member of the committee. And then the week after that, we can schedule a subcommittee meeting to review them, do some work, and then probably for, if not April, then May at the latest, sort of have something sort of more concrete and finalized. Because I think with April, we'll be focusing more on hopefully doing some of our actual work day if possible. So, you know, and then we can sort of circle back with it in May if that's how it works out. But that's sort of my take on, you know, to use the best use of our time here tonight.
Okay, what do people think? Agree with Matthew?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Any other comments?
Chairman Jackson, can I just clarify for the minutes that we'll just have the comments circulated to the subcommittee and report back to Millbrook Valley Trails for the target of the May meeting?
Yeah, the May meeting or the April meeting?
I think, sorry, through you, Chair, Cindy, I think if we could ask the committee to submit comments for the subcommittee to review it at a later date, and then based on the subcommittee's ability to meet, we'll come forward to present to the Millbrook Valley Trails at a later date. Is that vague enough and copacetic for everyone?
Leaves it open, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So is
Okay.
everybody, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so if everyone's good to just, even if you don't have much in the way to contribute, like I said, I think the thing that we were sort of got a bit stuck on It sounds like Craig got some feedback on the language, so that's great. But don't, it would be helpful to receive comment from everyone, even if it's just thanks, like this, I'm okay with these changes, but this is my concern, or this is what I think. The project list is really where we wanted to focus sort of some of our efforts to sort of build a bit more of a structured plan of what we can do. And obviously, with COVID's implications on our work days, we can't be as productive or as in large numbers of groups and volunteers as we'd like. So that'll be something you consider. But the idea, and I think some members here weren't at the previous meeting. So just for the sake of being repetitive, and excuse me if I am, but the idea was that, the original intention in the document was for this to be a living document that, specifically in my reading of with regards to the project list, would be something that would, come back and be revisited by the committee on an ongoing basis to be a living document to sort of guide the work. But that can also be a benefit to provide council an understanding of what sort of projects are going on. And maybe it can be something done every term of council when the new MVT is created, each term of council, for them to be sort of the main sort of day one focus will be like, okay, well, this is where we were at with the projects we identified previously. Have things changed? Okay, well, we better, update this project list and take it back before council so that they're aware, and that sort of first quarter sort of thing. Just so that it just provides a bit more transparency, and in my opinion, and from the conversation with the subcommittee, is a more accurate purpose fulfillment of the document as it was intended. So obviously it hasn't been touched much in the way of the last 10 years. So if it can be sort of a bit more utilized moving forward, I think it'll be of help.
Okay, great. So we'll all keep that in mind then.
Sorry, Rob, I guess the thing we should clarify then, do you, for simplicity's sake, why doesn't everyone, if you're okay, should everyone just email you and then we'll collect that and you'll provide that to the subcommittee? How do we want to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. If everybody wants to email me their thoughts.
Yeah, just email Rob with a subcommittee or an SC acronym in the subject, and that way it makes it easier for him.
Yep, that's fine. I can collate all of it.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, 9.2. So at the last meeting, there was a question around Ontario Trails membership and whether we should pay it or if we have been paying. So I assume maybe Cindy or Yvette, you have an update on that?
Yes, through you, Chairman Jackson. I did do some research. So it looks like in 2011, 2013, 2014, and 2015, you did pay the membership, but it has not been paid since 2015. So I can pull the website up, or people can look on their own if you want, and then report back if you want to go forward with it. But it's ontariotrails.on.ca. And I think based on our last conversation, we can leave it up to the group to decide if they want to continue with the membership or if they would like to start paying back into it, or what you'd like to do from there.
Yeah, I think we determined that there was really no real benefit to us paying into that. And my understanding from our previous conversation, Ms. Hurley, is, are you still receiving correspondence from them?
Mr. Chairman, I do get correspondence. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the membership or if I just have been on this list of information forever. So I don't think it has anything to do with your membership. So I'm fine if I mean, again, you haven't paid it since 2015.
Right. Is everybody okay with continuing that status quo?
Yeah, I am. I'm just looking at the website. It doesn't appear as if they do anything nifty like offering lower price insurance or anything like that. It's just being a member of a club sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly think we're doing just fine on our own with advertisements and people knowing about the trails. Certainly it hasn't been an issue the last 15 months. Okay.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, Mr. Graham.
Just so then, I guess, I don't know if Yvette requires it, but then the only adjustment will be for the budget for the finances for the line item to be removed, and that 300 or whatever that's been otherwise allocated or designated in the finances, that it'll just be moved and removed from the budgeting or financial reporting and just be into the general funds. rather than how it's been structured earlier. That was the issue that was brought up for, so.
Right, good
as long
point.
as she-
Do we need a motion for that?
That's a Yvette question or a Cindy question.
I don't, if you need I don't even know if you have a motion. You haven't been paying it since 2015, right?
No, but
Yeah,
they have the $300 in the budget as a line item. So to be.
So
make it-
I would say a motion to transfer the $300 into your general. I'm trying to look at my budget right now, actually, see where
So
it
they
is.
only have 3 line items. There's only contracted services, memberships, and materials and supplies. So maybe we could move it into materials and supplies, just as a thought.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, you've got 300. Yeah, there's your $300 right here under 3140. So
Just remove it. Yeah.
yeah, you can just move it into materials and supplies if that's fine.
Sure.
That's
So
fine.
no motion required.
Yeah, there is. I need a mover and a seconder, please, Chairman
Yeah.
Jackson, for money.
I'll-
Yeah.
Maureen,
I'll
you want-
move to take it out,
All right,
take the line item out.
Mr. Follis, seconder. Maureen,
Sure. Mhm.
wonderful, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right,
Thanks.
thank you very much. Cindy, do you want to talk about the federal funding announcement?
Do we want to do Spring Day first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I believe Melissa is going to talk about the federal funding announcement, but I might be wrong. I could
I think-
get creative if I need.
I think I am.
Oh, I think Matthew is. Okay.
Okay,
Got your
sorry,
back, Melissa.
sorry, I missed spring work day. Okay, so I didn't, did I request this as a line item, as an agenda item, or was it just?
Wasn't me.
Wasn't me. Okay, well, so I think we discussed yesterday, at our last meeting, that obviously we will be, due to the ongoing pandemic, we will be unable to have our typical spring workday again. But we had very successful sort of closed workday in the fall. And so I think once we get closer, when the ground is totally thawed and the trails are less wet, i.e., we usually have a spring workday in May anyway, so we've got another, 6 weeks to go at least. We can talk about those general things that the Dave and I and others just talked about in terms of the maintenance and the repairs we can do. I will try to get out and do the curved boardwalk on Lower Meds when possible. And again, we're going to be somewhat limited with wood. But I will say one of the things that we did purchase at the end of 2020, remember, is that we have purchased new screening, new gravel, and new flagstones. And those are to be delivered any day now to the works yard. I will coordinate that with Peterborough Landscape Supply, but those have all been paid for, but they just weren't delivered because of, obviously we didn't need them in the dead of winter. So those types of materials will be ready for us. So as we all are on the trails, or not on the trails if they're closed, but as I always say, keep in mind, look for areas that could use some work, take pictures on your phone, jot it down somewhere, and we can discuss it come April, once we're in a better situation to be able to get out there and drier conditions, etc. And who knows, maybe some of us will even be vaccinated by then if we're lucky. So we may be able to gather in easier and smaller groups. So that's all I was going to say about a spring work day. Did anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, Rob, that maybe Cindy, just for the record, usually our next meeting will be the one meeting before the workday. So that agenda will probably be dominated by that discussion, just just a heads up for the agenda for that meeting.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So we traditionally, for the new people who have joined us this evening, traditionally we tried to do work days very close to Earth Day, which I believe is April 22nd. But the last few years we found that it was still kind of wet, still even possibly snow. So generally we tried to do it the first or second week of May, prior to the May 2-4 weekend, and then starting to lose people to cottages and things like that. So that's what we've gone with probably the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I guess. And it's worked very well. So yeah, that's sort of the new timeline, just as an FYI. Okay, Matt, the funding announcement.
Thanks, Rob. So through you, there was a recent announcement, I believe it was last week, the day is escaping me, but the mayor actually brought it to my attention that there has been a substantial investment of $400 million from the feds looking for and supporting active transportation exclusively. Initially, he suggested or asked me to look into it with regards to potential for Millbrook Valley trails. I've done a little bit of due diligence on beyond this article, and I'm not quite sure if it's something that most of the funds are designed specifically or intended to specifically support more sort of active transit sort of planning and things like that to integrate, non-motorized forms of transportation for things like work and commutes, et cetera, or connecting certain gateways with regards to that. But I think in conversations I've had, I think it might be something that we as staff and maybe Melissa could be utilized to maybe look into this a little bit more. And if there's something that might have potential for us to theoretically apply for, then so be it. But I think from my further review, I don't know if there's going to be much in the way of overlap, but obviously active transportation is an important piece, especially for this federal government moving forward. So, we're keeping breast of those sorts of things. And obviously, Bridget might also be someone who can help us should grant applications be warranted. So sort of just wanted to highlight it, say that we're looking into it, and we'll see if it might have, potential down the road, but definitely something to think about.
Okay, great. And so we're gonna wait to hear something.
Yeah, we'll look into it in a bit more detail. I just wanted to raise that it's a new opportunity with the funding coming available. It was just announced, like it says here, on the Friday. So much it's lots of fine print to read, but it might there might be an opportunity for funding, but again, it might be project specific, which is all the more reason to do this update to the master plan, to have those sorts of projects identified and allocated, and then we can sort of strike while the iron's hot with some of these plans. So
okay, great. Any questions on that? No. All right, excellent. We'll wait to hear back. So then the last item on the agenda is an update on the North Trail expansion. So did you want me to do that, Matt, or did you want to talk about it?
Probably be more appropriate to come from someone on the subcommittee, but
okay.
If that's all right.
So I'm sorry, I guess I was asking if you had any sort of questions on that, but I will.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, but it makes sense. I'll just sort of sum it up very quickly. So we've had a number of meetings, 3 or 4, I believe, the subcommittee, myself, Mr. Frizzle, Maureen, and Craig. John stepped away, I believe, after the first meeting. So we've got a number of action items here. So again, a request from Township for a copy of the community survey to support the corporate strategic plan. Request from Township staff of an updated corporate strategic plan has been produced, and if so, can we be provided a copy? And then from the MVT North Expansion Committee subcommittee to complete a detailed report on the area of interest, not including the former Millbrook Correctional Facility property at this time, determine the baseline conditions for planning context for the area. And again, that will feed into the Cavan Monaghan Trails Master Plan priority table, as we just discussed in the previous point of order, and then we had some recommendations in terms of what those priorities should be given to that table for the Cavan Monaghan Trails Master Plan update as per our discussion. Craig has been the real driving force behind this, and Craig has done an absolutely incredible amount of work and very detailed work on that. So we very much appreciate that. Having said that, Craig, is there anything, I know I sort of went over that at about a 30,000 foot level. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, the one point I was going to make, Mr. Chair, is one you made about kind of aligning that with that priorities table. I think my, without getting into the details here, my suggestion that I'll provide in through email is to really look at maybe segmenting some of those ambitious routes as valuable as they would be. I think maybe thinking about segmenting some of those sites as per our review. So for instance, like site, I think it's site 6. You could look at segmenting that potentially if there's feasibility to run that route and connect it to the Victoria trail. It kind of ends in Bethany right now. Like maybe you look at more of a short-term versus long-term strategy along that link, along that proposed link. So that's going to be some of the comments I'll submit to you. Again, kind of more related to the master plan revisions, but I think it pertains to some of the items in the priority table here too. So people might want to think about that, right? If you can't visualize that, for instance, if there was an opportunity to, in say 1 to 3 years, have a segment of the Victoria Rail Trail Site 6 from perhaps Station Trail to Fallis Line, I think that would be a good accomplishment if that could be done. But so rather than trying to think, in its entirety, think even shorter term and maybe just be realistic about what can be achieved, right?
Okay, wonderful. Any comments on that?
I guess, Mr. Chair, the only other comment I'd have is that in looking at the revised plan, I'm not sure if I think site, if somebody could scroll down in the into that table there, site 7. I'm not sure if that was excluded from the revised plan or if the comment was, do we want to consider that route? But this table here does not now align with what I saw in the revised master plan. So it's just a note on that. I'm not sure if site 7 was explicitly listed in the revised version.
Okay. Any thoughts or comments?
The only the third and final comment I'll make through you, Mr. Chair, is that site 7, there's a typo there. I believe it's supposed to say Fallis Line east to Cedar Valley Road, not Fallis Line east to Valley Road.
Right.
Okay.
Maureen, so I was going to go, Maureen, but I do want to interrupt.
No, that was what I was going to bring to everyone's attention, was what Craig just said.
Okay. My comment then through you, Chair, would just be, I think the idea or the strategy to sort of piecemeal or maybe segment some of the identified potential linkages is prudent, especially obviously the longer or the wider or I guess the longer the trail potentially being pursued, in the most of these regards, the more property owners that are not the municipality are involved, and obviously the more complications therein, that follow. So there's obviously, developments, we're all aware of the Tower Hill North development that, is going to be further discussed and coming to fruition in the not too distant future. But there's, along with the site 7 in regard to that low road allowance, there's a lot of that lands that are identified for commercial development in the, not too distant horizon as well. So that road allowance as it currently sits is probably not going to be the state of that road allowance for, in a 10-year horizon, let's just say hypothetically. So, but, I thought this was a very, thorough and well done, and there's definitely lots to look at. And I think this should be something that we talk about more probably at the subcommittee as well, to sort of hone in some of those specific objectives moving forward, whether they're short, mid, or long range sort of discussions. So.
Mhm. It just occurred to me that Site 6 in particular, if we chose to pursue it segmentally, it might be made more attractive to developers if we could pursue the federal funding, because that would be a non-school bus route for kids to go to the elementary school on Paulus Line if that comes to pass. And that would be very much along the lines of what the new federal funding for active transportation is trying to do, is to try to keep kids on bikes and walking, going to school.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, well, maybe Craig, you and I can talk about sort of the next steps internally with the subcommittee offline.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
great. Okay, any other issues that anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn?
The only other thing, Rob, is just maybe it's more for Cindy. Is that with the now that obviously for our subcommittee with regards to the MBT master or the master plan, in Alana's absence, or moving on, that probably Yvette and Melissa will be taking, or should probably be included on our master plan subcommittee meeting whenever that gets done. Maybe Yvette wants to speak to that, but just so Cindy's aware. Yvette, is that a nod?
Yes, Matthew. I can certainly, I do think it's important to involve Melissa, of course, as a staff representative. If the committee is okay with that, that would be super. I'm certainly here to assist in the beginning, but eventually I will not be taking part on the committee. So I will leave it up to Melissa and Cindy, but absolutely in the beginning.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Going
Through
once?
you, Chairman Jackson, just for clarification purposes, as a general rule, we really can't just add things to the end of a meeting if it hasn't been already approved or amended at the beginning of the motion. So what about if this is something, so I noticed the last meeting you guys did this as well. So what if we choose this moment to make sure we have those items identified so they come forward on the next agenda?
Sure, sounds wonderful. Is there anything anybody would like to speak to at the next agenda, at the next meeting?
I currently have the spring workday there and the timber nooks coming. And anything else.
Okay,
that you
well,
feel.
as always, if there's anything anybody wants to speak to, just email myself or Cindy, and we can have it added to the agenda prior to the meeting. And generally, you like to get the agenda out about a week before, Cindy?
If we can, that's the target. Yeah.
Okay. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Go for it, Alex.
I motion to adjourn.
You've
I'm hungry.
missed
I'm going to
Hillary-
make dinner.
You missed Hillary a couple times too, Rob. So don't, we want to make sure we get everyone in on these motions.
That's right. So who's going to second?
I'll second.
Hillary, a second. All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. And hopefully we'll be able to see you in person soon. But in the meantime, everybody stay safe, okay?